have done it. It's the only logically possible, most best world for us to live in,
But
right? That's why.
that assumes that we can't imagine a better one. I mean, think about it. Even in the Revelation, right? There is going to be this perfection, a purging of the evil, a judgment. If that's within the Revelation. So, like, I think of it within Christian terms. I don't know Islam through and through in the various doctrines and theologies in the depths of all their schools. I imagine it's very much complex, like Christianity, with its various doctrines and theologies. But this world is in a fallen state. Sin exists in this problematic situation where God's going to have to come in and fix it. That means it's not where it should be, which would mean it fell somehow. It's not in the best of possible worlds, because if it was, he wouldn't have to fix it somehow or rid it of evil or destroy the wickedness or
Brilliant.
whatever.
Yeah.
You see what I'm
Um,
saying?
yeah, but that's because of us. Like this world initially, this world initially was a perfect world. Was practically like paradise. We call that Jannah in
If I may
Islam.
ask you, just
Yeah,
because
go
you know
ahead.
the Garden of Eden story,
Yeah,
how does this spell out in the Islamic version? Because my
same
understanding is
thing. Same thing.
God knows everything, right?
Yeah.
So how the hell did the serpent end up in this garden? Like, how can the deceiver, the Satan, be in the garden to allow us to fall? How can a father let their child go and get into this pickle? Did he want that? Is that what Allah wanted,
Well,
according to
that was
Islam? Because many,
well.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I am sorry for interrupting you, but
no, you're
if
fine.
I may just answer the question. Like I was saying, it is all down to us. God does not cause us to do things. We have the free will to pick and choose things, right? Like we choose to do good or we choose to do evil. In this world, it was once a perfect paradise, but our mother and father, Adam and Eve, ruined it by falling into the trickery of Satan as the serpent. Therefore, God had to punish them by banishing them from I can't remember what it's called in Islam, but from the Garden of Eden. And as a result of that, we're now in a flawed world where, we're human beings who suffer, both naturally, as in undergoing the struggle of being a human, and actually interacting with the real world. We're subject to all sorts of diseases and external dangers. But problem is with that is that you're kind of assuming that just because God knows something, because we know God knows everything, but just because God has foreknowledge, that somehow that implies causation. And I feel like that's kind of like a very big leap you're taking. So
Uh,
just because I know something might happen it doesn't mean I caused it, right?
I think we're going back to before that, like foreknowledge of why he created us that way in the first place. Whether he knows what we're going to do or not, why do it in the first place? To your point, Derek. So why create all these parameters of the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, and real quick before we answer that in depth, super chats came in. Doc Pleuromonot, really, thank you, bless you, my friend. If God is omnipotent, character development via catastrophe looks
Oh,
inefficient at
I
best.
love that. I love
So
that.
the claim moralizes pain after the fact. It doesn't justify it beforehand. Thank you. We want to address
Uh,
this, gentlemen.
Character development
if
via
God
catastrophe. That's like every Avengers movie ever made.
if God is omnipotent, character development via catastrophe looks inefficient at best. So the claim moralizes the pain after the fact. It doesn't justify it beforehand. Interesting statement there. It does. The only way I can seem to justify it is the same point I've given you, gentlemen, before, which is God has created this world. It's the best of all possible worlds. And since he is the maximally great being, he has to naturally adapt to what this world needs. And since he's all powerful, he's obviously capable of doing that. Moralizing that pain, on the other hand, yeah, that kind of, at best, it does do that, but justifying it, the only way you can justify it is just accepting the theological claim, which is this is the best possible world. It couldn't have been otherwise. We have to suffer.
Thank you for that. And then Valena, thank you for the super chat. People, wake up. Your actions mean everything. Thank you, Valena. Appreciate the super chat. I agree with that sentiment. So, okay, back to the Garden of Eden and this whole issue. I have like obviously biblical issues, but that's why I don't know really what Islamic Genesis story, because I think there's different theologies within Islam, like there is within Christianity. You ask a predestinarian, someone who's more deterministic, versus someone who thinks libertarian free will is the case. They're going to have completely different explanations for the origin of evil and how things ended up the way they did. And I think the same might be true if I'm speaking to a certain Muslim caller who might have a certain view versus another. Most, from what I understand, just go to free will to get God off the hook. The ones that are tougher try to go, oh, no, I'm not ashamed. God creates everything. He does it all. Like, but even your point earlier, if I know that there's going to be a bomb drop somewhere and 50,000 people might die, I know it. I know it beforehand, but I do nothing to stop it. Unless this entire world is a trick, everything we have intuited to be in our ethical systems, every religion's intuitions, every human's intuitions are completely made up to where bad is actually good. And death is actually great, which is why we see so much fossil and death of life in this world that we've lived in. And evolution ends up being the height of good. And we die, and then God goes, you know what? You fit right in. All that ugly, nasty is actually good. The good is actually bad. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around how the God is benevolent and yet allows such a world where things I could get banned for saying on YouTube that I'm not going to say are happening on a daily basis to humans. And they might say, well, that a lot of that's from humans themselves. But if the power is that God has that power to stop these things, it really, really does make me think they can't be a parent. They can't have the same love in the same way. That's why deism would make more sense in my mind. If you're forced to have a creator, let it be not concerned with what we have going on. It made it, dropped the ball, and dipped out, because I can't sit back and watch you and say I love you and these things are happening unless, like I said, we get there and then God reveals to us, guess what? Everything you thought, all of those thought processes and your intuitions were all bullshit. You had it all wrong. I mean, and if that's I don't know if that's the world we're living in, we're screwed.
Well, I have a question for you, Myth Vision. Now you've pointed out deism, so I'll pose an example to you. Let's say I have a factory, and in this factory there are about hundreds of workers, right? And let's say I'm running the factory. Would it make sense that I keep things running, that I fund their salaries, that I fund their machinery, and then I just book it, that I leave? Would it make sense? Like, that's why I believe, like, kind of deism just kind of like, it just doesn't make sense, because, God is, obviously he's all compassionate, all loving, all merciful, good, whatnot. So, like, deism cannot work under that framework. It has to be a God that is involved. It cannot be otherwise, because it just wouldn't make sense to leave the factory workers. You know what I mean?
Using our own intuitions again. We can only go based off of our intuitions and what we've observed and experienced and stuff. And so, again, to push back with an opposite deity is to say, how do you know? How do you know that I get why it makes sense why a human might not do that. But then again, humans also set things up and let managers run their businesses, and they go off and they chill with pina coladas on the beach somewhere, and their business is being run perfectly fine. They can see it from wherever they're at, and they don't have to do anything about it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just making up a hypothetical. By the way, 2 super chats real quick, guys.
Go ahead.
Victor Engelman, thank you so much. If there is a triomni being, free will is impossible. We do what God forces us to do by making the universe in a way he knew leads to us doing it.
So is he arguing for a more deterministic framework? Like, how everything is kind of set in stone, that free will is non-existent? Is that what he's trying to do?
It seems to be, at least the form of free will would be like libertarian free will. We might think we have some, but I think this is a more deterministic super
Well,
chat.
this brings up a very good question now, and this is pertaining to the topic, and this for the both of you. Do you think free will exists? Do you think the concept is actually do you think it makes sense? Do you think it exists at the very least, to some degree?
Well, like Derek was saying, I think some version of it exists where, you know, I just picked up this phone and I did it of my own volition. But to go into the root of why I chose to do that and I didn't pick up my water bottle instead, I don't really know why I did that. Like, why did I pick one and not the other? So I think that's where the free will element kind of loses its power for me, because I really don't know why I did that.
Mm.
Do you think free will and freedom of choice can be equated? Do you think they're the same thing?
I think they're different, especially when we're talking about things in a philosophical way, and especially like in a religious discussion. Because when we're talking about, do I really have a choice of leaving Islam or remaining Muslim in this world where we're assuming that there's this being, this deity that created me? I don't think so. I think that's where the free will component falls apart.
Gentlemen, real quick, sorry to interrupt.
Go
Super chats here. Vigi Soful, thank you so much. If Isaiah 53 is about the righteous remnant, why God pleased to crush the righteous servant? Verse 10. This only fits Jesus, who was our sacrifice for our sins. Appreciate the super chat. Again,
I defer to your expertise on this.
Look, there's I am planning on doing a call-in show where we deal with Isaiah 53 exclusively. I have much to say about this, but this is not the correct show right now to deal with this topic. If you feel like calling in, feel free to call in. I really do appreciate the super chat, but I will say this. There have been people who've identified that suffering servant with several other prophets in the time of Isaiah, including Isaiah himself. But most commonly, the critical scholarly view is that it is a righteous remnant of Israel, obviously, that is under persecution, that is dealing with the troubles of this prophet back then that he's describing in the text. So you could say a lot of people fit this idea that have been suffered, that have been martyred or whatever later on. I believe the teacher of righteousness, if I'm not mistaken, in the Qumran sect, identified with Isaiah 53 as well. So later Jews may have seen individuals and try to highlight it there. Dr. Romanout wants to add to the discussion of what we said with Victor, guys. Says, I think Victor is getting at, if the will is free, why is it already known and fixed? If it's fixed, in what sense is it free?
Well, the will isn't fixed. The will is known, but it isn't fixed. Like, it's basically God's knowledge is not, it's not constant, it's adaptive. Like, he knows what happens before it happens, but it's only because he's able to adapt to the information that he's given. It's not
so he's
fixed
given information?
No, as in when I say given, I don't mean literally given, but I mean like the information he has, like the information he's in possession of. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a different kind of philosophical way to negotiate with how the world functions and operates and goes from one cause and effect to the next. I guess it just depends on the person you ask, right? Because when I was a Calvinist, I believed God caused all things, including good and evil. And I read Isaiah, the very place, right near the place our last super chatter brought up, where Isaiah 40 something, I create light, I create darkness, I create good, I create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And I think to myself, so God just knows what's going to happen, but he's not active in causing all things to happen?
Well, like the thing is, where does the element of free choice, like free will, come into this in someone's life? Because you're born in the time that you're born in the area that you're born, you experience all these, you're born to parents that you can't control. All of these things are determined by God. He created this world. He created you to have the limitations and flaws that you have. So let's say we're talking about someone who decided to leave Islam rather than stay in it. It's really hard to determine where that element of free will comes in when you have all of these variables out of that individual's control. And I think that that's really where like free will just does not work when you have this kind of framework with this kind of God that Islam has.
Rajal, real quick, Victor Engelman says, I say free will doesn't solve the problem of evil. That's what Victor is trying to say ultimately. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for the super chat. So, Rajal, if you will, give us one more, and then I want to take our next caller because I only have so much time, and I really appreciate you calling in. These are always a blast.
Feel free to call me Mikhail, not Rajal.
Call you what?
Feel free to call me by my actual name, Mikhail,
Oh,
not Rajal.
Mikhail. Okay, Mikhail. I got you. I
don't even know why I chose that name. I thought.
Were you going just for like Rajul as in man in Arabic?
Yeah, but I don't know why I misspelled it. So, anyway,
Yep.
I'd say it's a lot to take in here, really, but because there are a couple of arguments that I have not heard before. But I would say the best robust argument for free will is that it's just it's essentially one of the more significant components in this adaptive universe that God has created. He's created a planet where he has placed around billions of human beings, and he understands everything that each and every one of them are doing, but he doesn't necessarily cause them in the sense that, yeah, sure, he places you in the situation. He places you with certain parents, certain belief system. He creates your brain structure. He personally organizes every single life event that will ever happen to you. Right? Every single one. He knows what sexuality you'll have. He knows what name you'll be given. He knows what school you'll go to. He knows every single minute and macro detail about your human life. And he also knows the one important thing, how long you'll actually live. But he doesn't cause those things. He doesn't cause whatever decisions you make within the frameworks he's placed you in. He's just slowly observing this small creature he's placed in this vial navigate itself through all these paths and mazes. So I'd say that free will is just what bridges the gap between God's decision and your reaction. If that makes sense.
I think it only works when we look at let's say we're looking at someone who built an ant farm. They brought all the supplies, they brought the ants, they put them in the ant farm and then just observed. I don't think that's equivalent to a deity that literally created every single component of that ant farm, determined all of the flaws, all of the limitations, all of the abilities of the ants, so on and so forth, and determined all of the variables that would lead to what ended up happening and is in control of them. It just doesn't translate.
Well, yeah, of course, your decisions are summations of the conditions you're placed in. So every single decision you make is just ultimately what is caused beforehand.
I would
still
rebut this idea with the engineer would still be responsible.
I agree.
You see, no matter what you do, it's like buying the car. It's like engineers built the car. It has, ultimately ways of becoming flawed, but you drove it. Therefore, we're going to blame you. You made it to where it could be flawed. And that is the reason, I think, to begin with a perfect deity, that's a problem. If you have a God that comes along and says, I don't have it all figured out. Look, I'm still learning. Okay, guess what? We're in a different type of world. And the revelation you just described about God seems